So we're starting Genesis. Genesis is the Greek name from the Hebrew name Bereshith.
It's time to change your world. It's time to let it go. The things you used to think, the things you used to know, they don't help you anymore. It's time to change your mind. If it's peace you want to find.
This is Kurt Kaikonen, pastor of Calvary Chapel, Waterford, at your neighborhood church. Today on Change Your World, we'll be in the book of Genesis. So grab your Bible. We'll be starting in chapter 27.
It's time to change your world. You need to let it go.
So Rebecca, she's not your typical mild-mannered Midwestern housewife. And she's not submitted to her husband's authority in this family. And she's tricky. And she has a nature that's not much unlike her son, heel catcher, Jacob. And she's a bit like her brother, Laban, the thief. So on that side of the family, you had to watch it because they were a clever bunch. And they had some very serious issues going on. Because when she develops her plot, it's calculated and it's planned with precision. Rebecca, she leaves nothing to chance. So Esau, he walks in to visit his old dad because he's dad's favorite. And they have this bond, just him and dad. They're buddies. And dad tells him secretly, and nobody else knows this, but he's still going to give Esau the family blessing. But this birthright and blessing, they're both connected. And Esau, he knows that he already sold it. But he likes to think of them of being separate. But they weren't separate. They weren't his to claim. And everybody knew it, and it was obvious to all of them. And when Esau sold it, he didn't care one bit about the things of God. Esau never had a place for God in his life. And he's already disqualified himself in any type of spiritual blessing from God. He's already married 2 pagan wives, and he has spent his whole life worshiping in the behaviors of their culture. He's a fornicator. He was involved in their worship activities before he was ever married. And God's blessing to the world, and through whom he would bring his own son, they were not going to come through some godless pagan unbelievers. And the only reason Esau even cares now is that he now realizes all those material blessings and benefits that would come in this blessing. And later on, when he realizes that he lost it, he'll cry like a little baby who lost his candy. But he will never repent, because instead of looking at himself, at what he's done, he's going to blame Jacob. He'll never take responsibility for his own actions. But right now, he's excited because Dad's going to give him the blessing anyways, because Dad likes him better. And he's thinking, ha, 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 Jacob, now who's the heel catcher? But Isaac, he could bless Esau all day long, and it wouldn't mean a thing, because Isaac, he has no right to pass down God's blessings. Only God does. So Rebecca, she conspires the betrayal, and it's good. And in this plan, she's left nothing to chance. And she thinks, my husband's blind. I only have to get past only 4 of his senses. And now it's like mission impossible. Bum, 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 bum. Nothing will be as it seems. And it will work. Because you don't mess with Laban's sister, and you don't mess with my favorite son. Well, we will first have to get past Isaac's sense of taste. But I know how Esau makes his meat. I know the spices. I know the textures. I can make goat taste like venison because Rebecca, she's an excellent cook. And anyways, he's so old, he probably can't taste the difference. So the first hurdle is solved. Check. All right, the second hurdle, the sense of smell. Oh yes, I have Esau's dirty clothes. And I have no idea why this mom would have Esau's dirty clothes, because is she really doing his laundry? Like he's way over 40 years old and he has his own 2 wives, but she has them and she's going to make use of them. And I know that Isaac, when he smells them, he's going to say how good they smell, like a field blessed by the Lord. But I can't imagine those clothes smelling good in any way. A stinky grown man tromping around the woods, hunting all day. It sounds like they would smell a little bit organic to me. But anyways, Jacob, he will smell like Esau. So the second hurdle is solved. Check. And now there's the sense of touch. Well, the only places that will be exposed will be his hands and his neck. And the clothes will cover everything else because they both have hair and they both have beards. And Isaac won't be able to see the color of Esau's bright red hair. So Rebekah figures she can use those goat skins from the goats she's making the fake venison from because she's so resourceful. She's kind of like a Martha Stewart. And this kind of makes you think, what did Esau look like? Was he like some kind of Sasquatch or like some Neanderthal caveman with hair all over his body? But that's what girls liked back then. And so Rebekah, she overcomes that third hurdle, the sense of touch. Check. And now this fourth hurdle, well, this is the toughest hurdle. And it's the sense of hearing. Because with Isaac's blindness, his sense of hearing, it may be heightened. And even though they're twins, they sound nothing alike. But if Jacob, if he can do his best, and he doesn't say too much, and we can give Isaac some wine with that meal. So if we can subdue his senses, we may have a chance. And we just might pass it off. So that fourth sense of hearing, check. So now Rebekah, she finds Jacob, and she tells him what she heard, and then she tells him what she's thinking. And she says, but we're going to have to be quick, because Esau is hunting now. And Jacob, he knows this is wrong, and that he should have no part of it. But he's not concerned with being wrong. He's only concerned about getting caught. And he wants that birthright, because he bought it. And he wants that blessing because that's part of it. But he doesn't want to be cursed, not by his dad or not by God. Because Jacob, he has a heart for God, even though he's kind of a deceptive kind of guy. And the only part of Jacob's concern about his mother's plan is that hairy part. And his mom explains to him how they'll get around it. But to get him to seal the deal, to get Jacob's commitment to this deception, Rebekah says, let the curse be on me. And wow, and that did it. That's all it took. That's all he needed to hear. He needed the assurance that there would be no price for him to pay. But Jacob, he did pay a price, and so did Rebekah. And with Rebekah, although it doesn't say here that she was cursed, the price she paid was that she would never see her favorite son ever again. Because of this deception, Jacob, he'll be gone for over 20 years, living in the fear of his brother Esau. And all this trickery and all this deceit, it really never had to happen. Because Isaac's blessing of his soul meant nothing without God's stamp of approval. Jacob was to be the heir. And God, he's sovereign, and he said it, and that's the way it was going to be. And God needed no one's help in accomplishing his will. This only shows you how fallen this chosen family was. It shows how corrupt each of them are in their choices. But all these choices that all of them made, they were all made out of their own free will. And God, he was in none of this. So mom, she dresses up Jacob, and she makes sure everything is placed right. Clothes were probably too big, so she tucked him in and took him in. And anybody looking on, they would think Jacob looked like an idiot because he has all these goat skins tied to his hands and tied to his head. And then they probably rehearsed how Esau would talk to his father so that he would make no mistakes in his vocabulary, that he would only use the words that Esau would use. And she probably warned him not to say too many words. So now Jacob, he walks in with his with his fake bowl of game and his skin of wine. And Jacob calls out and he says, "My father." And Isaac, he's not sure. He can't see him. So he says, "Who are you, my son?" And Jacob, he tells his first lie. "I'm Esau, your firstborn. I've just done what you told me." And then Jacob's second lie. "Please sit, eat of my game that your soul may bless me." But it wasn't game, it was goat. And Jacob, he knew all the right words to say because his mother heard the conversation between them from her eavesdropping. So Isaac, he really had no reason to doubt that this was Esau because all of this was done in secret. Nobody else in the family knew what he was planning on doing, only Esau. But Isaac, he knew something wasn't right. This was too quick. So Isaac asked him, "How did you find it so quickly?" And then Jacob's third lie. And in this lie, he lies about God. He says, "Your God brought it to me." And Isaac, he knows something's not right, but he doesn't have any spiritual discernment in this matter. He has no spiritual senses, so he can only rely on his physical senses. So Isaac says, "Come here, let me feel you. I'm not really sure you're Esau." And then he's thinking, well, maybe something's wrong with my ears. Because you don't sound like Esau, you sound like Jacob, but you have those hairy hands. So Isaac blessed him, and he asked him again, because surely Jacob wouldn't lie to him twice. Are you really my son Esau?" And then Jacob lied the fourth time, and he says, "I am." And so Isaac, he eats his game, and for a dying man, he has a great appetite because he eats it all. And then Isaac says, "Come near now and kiss me, my son." And now Jacob, he betrays his father with a kiss. This was not a kiss of love. This was the kiss of betrayal. And this reminds us of Jesus when he was betrayed by one of the people he loved, and he was betrayed with a kiss. And for a son to do this to a father is inexcusable. And it's not just because Isaac's old and he's an invalid and he's blind, but it's because Isaac is his father. This is deep betrayal. And then Isaac smelled the clothes and he blessed him. And Isaac blesses him with the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth, with well-watered land and prosperity, and then with the material blessings, with grain and plenty of food and wine. And wine always represents joy. And then he makes him the ruler over peoples, and not only the foreigners, but rulers over his own brothers. And he only had one brother, and that was Esau. And Isaac tells him, "Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be those who bless you." And that was a blessing that was given to Abraham's descendants. And that blessing, well, that still remains today, and it's still with the people of Israel. And just like that Mission Impossible movie, as soon as the imposter walks out, the real Esau walks in. And Esau, he says almost the exact same words. The only word he didn't say was please. And again, with Isaac being blind, he says, Who are you? And Esau tells him, "It's me, your firstborn." And then Isaac trembles because Isaac knows he's been undone. And not so much by Jacob. He knows that he's been undone and he's been caught by God and that he's been overruled. And he asks, "Well, where's the one who hunted game and came and brought it to me, and I ate all of it before you came?" And he knows it was Jacob. And Isaac said, "I ate all of it," and he will be blessed. Because even in this deception, God allowed Isaac to bless Jacob, and the blessing was real. And it's not because Isaac said it, and it's not because Jacob deserved it. It's because God ordained it in God's own sovereignty, in spite of the deception of Jacob and despite of the rebellion of Isaac. And Isaac knew that that blessing that he spoke had God's stamp of approval on it, and Isaac couldn't take it back. No one could take it back. And then this big burly man starts crying like a big baby. And it says Esau cried bitterly, but he's not crying in repentance because he's not sorry for anything. Because he's still not sorry about marrying those two pagan women or for being a fornicator. He's only crying for the loss of that blessing because that blessing was connected to the birthright that he sold. And he was just being shady. He thought he had a chance of getting it back. But it wasn't like Esau had changed his mind and now he wanted the things of God, because he didn't like the things of God. He just wanted the stuff. He wanted the land. He wanted the material wealth. He wanted all the honor without being honorable. And he wanted respect without being respectable. Esau never wanted to be the kind of man that God would bless. He wanted all the blessings of God, but without God. And we see that a lot in our world. We see the whole world wanting peace and love and joy. And they want to have security and prosperity. And they all want to be forgiven when they wrong others. And they want to be shown mercy when they're judged. Everybody wants those things. They just don't want the God who gives those things. They want God's things, but they want it without him. And all of these things, all these attributes of God, they all belong to Jesus because his Father gave them to him. And to want all those kind of things without Jesus, it's just like being like Esau. And so Esau, he cries and he begs his dad to give him a blessing. And he says, is there only one? And Isaac, he feels so sorry for his favorite son because he knows that he led him to believe that he'd be getting that blessing. And so Isaac, he blames Jacob, that it was through Jacob's deceit. And then Esau, he blames Jacob. And he accuses Jacob of tricking him and taking it away from him twice. But in this case with Esau, Jacob didn't take it. He didn't take anything. Esau sold it. He just didn't want to take responsibility for his own choices because it's just easier to blame somebody else for your foolish actions. But Esau, he had free will. Nobody forced him. But Isaac, he knew that there was only one blessing, and it was gone. And Isaac tells Esau straight. He says, I made Jacob your master, and I sustained him with grain and with wine. And Esau, he kept crying and begging. And it's really quite pitiful. And so Isaac, he makes up some kind of blessing, but it actually sounds more like a curse. And he uses a lot of the same words as the blessing for Jacob, like the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth, where those things were given as gifts to Jacob. But in the context with Esau, they meant, well, you're going to be living away from the land. And then living off the fatness of the land means your descendants, they're going to be nomads. They're going to be living in the elements under the dew of heaven, in the wilderness areas. And you're going to have to live by your sword, which means you're going to survive by violence. And your nation, well, it's going to be subject to Jacob's nation. But at some points, you're going to get restless and you're going to break it. And all these things came true. And you can read about it in 2 Kings 8:20. And the very last known descendants of Esau that history tells us about, it's the family of the Herods. They were Edomites. And Esau's other name, remember, was Edom. And the Herods, they ruled in Israel in the time of Jesus. And they killed all the baby boys in Bethlehem because he was trying to kill the Messiah. And that was after the wise men told Herod where the Messiah was to be born. And then his son, another King Herod, he killed John the Baptist. And he wanted to see Jesus perform some tricks. But when Jesus saw him, he wouldn't even speak to him. And you wonder, with this blessing being much more like a curse, why did Isaac not care about those things being in Jacob's life? Would he have preferred for Jacob to have all those hardships? And so after Esau, he didn't receive the blessing. And it says, he hated Jacob. And that's pretty strong. And we're told clearly that it was out of envy. Because he blames Jacob for what he lost. Because if Esau can't enjoy these blessings, Jacob won't either. And I'm going to kill him. So if I'm going to have to live by the sword, I'm going to use it on Jacob first. And so Esau says, I'll wait for dad to die before I do it. And you notice, he doesn't say, I'm going to wait for mom to die. So I'm pretty sure that he's mad at her too. And Rebekah, she heard this somehow. She probably had her ear up against another tent wall in the right place at the right time, because she knew everything that was going on in that household. But she never imagined that Esau would take that loss so badly to the point where he would murder his own brother. But she believes him because she knows Esau's nature and knows that he can't control his anger and how he can be violent, and that this was not an idle threat. And she thought, well, when Isaac dies, because everybody in that house thought Isaac was dying, and they thought he was going to die any day, that she would lose not only her husband, but she would lose her favorite son. And so she calls Jacob and she tells him, Esau's going to kill you. And she tells him, go to Laban, go to my brothers, and it'll only be for a few days. And when his hate subsides, I'll call you back. But Esau's hate, it never subsided. And those few days became 20 years. And somehow Rebekah had patched things up with Isaac, because Rebekah was the love of Isaac's life. And she complains about Esau's wives, how she would hate her life if Jacob ever married one of these pagan girls. So Rebekah uses this complaint of hurt to get Isaac to send Jacob to Laban. And so now, instead of Isaac chewing Jacob out for his deceit, he blesses Jacob. And he commands him to take a wife from Laban's daughters. And so Jacob runs to escape Esau's sword. But see, Esau, he also hears about that command that Isaac gave to Jacob not to marry a Canaanite woman. And he realizes that these Canaanite wives, they didn't please his father. And there's a point here where you kind of just really have to feel sorry for Esau. Because even though he doesn't have a place for God, and even though he loves every nasty and every fleshy thing, and even though he's traded everything of value for a worthless life, he really wanted the approval of his father. He's kind of like a boy who never ever really grew up and would throw a big fit when he didn't get his way. But he felt he lost his father with the loss of that blessing. And he really did want his father's approval because he really did love his dad. But it was way too late to get rid of his pagan wives. And so in an effort to try to please his parents, he took another wife from a relative. And it wasn't from Haran, but it was from a family member. It was from Ishmael. And Ishmael, if you remember, that's Isaac's half-brother. Esau's trying his best to regain his father's approval. And this whole story, this Jerry Springer soap opera drama, you have to realize none of this had to ever happen. And the only reason it did happen is that everybody wanted their own way, in spite of what God said. And just like them, and how God had plans for all of them, God has great plans for all of us. But if we want to fight him, and if we want to get our own way, and to take our own lives into our own hands, and not to trust God, and not to wait, well, God, he's a gentleman. He'll eventually let us all have our way, because he's given us free will, just like he gave them free will. But like them, if we get our own way, and we neglect God, well, we will pay the price too.
You need to change your world. You need to let it go.
Thanks for listening to Change Your World. Change Your World is an outreach of Calvary Chapel, Waterford, and your neighborhood church. If you're listening to Change Your World in the Detroit metro area, why don't you join us for church this Sunday? Our service time is 10 a.m. at Calvary Chapel, Waterford, 183 South Winding Drive, Waterford, Michigan. We're competing with the Catholics. It's only an hour. All the donuts you can eat, and you don't have to believe a thing we say, but it could change your world.
You need to change your world.
The rest of today's message can be heard at yourneighborhoodchurch.org. So check us out and download the app. And until next week, remember,